Hello and welcome to the Becoming Your Highest Self podcast. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friend. If you've been looking for a podcast geared towards your growth, self-awareness, navigating your brain's daily mind drama, and deep inner work to become your highest and best self, you are in the perfect place. Let's get started. Hello, happy Monday, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming Your Highest Self podcast. I'm Macy Renee, and I'm so excited to have you here with me. I am recording this a little bit later. It's been crazy. I'm still in Louisville, Kentucky, visiting family. I leave this week, and I'm definitely going to miss everyone, but I am super excited to get back to Las Vegas because I am working on a new program for you guys. Super excited about that, and I'm just ready to put my head down and get to it so that it gets finished, so we can release it, and you can know all of the things. So I'm not going to have a 10-minute intro this week. We'll keep it short, and we're going to talk about navigating relationship differences. I don't think that I've ever talked about this before, but I think it's an important topic because a lot of times even my clients are coming to me and we do a lot of coaching on things within their relationship, right? Not always like bad things, but just their ability to even get along and communicate with their partner sometimes because of the differences in who they are, their personalities, and all sorts of things. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about some different relationship differences that my husband and I have with each other, and personality differences, and how we make that work. So a little recap, my husband and I have been together since we were in high school. And it's funny because as an adult who has now been in personal development since, I started personal development in 2014. So that's when I actually made the conscious decision to start bettering myself, to start reading the books and making decisions towards becoming a better version of myself. And then I found coaching coaching found me in 2016. So I've been in the self-help industry for a good amount of time. And in that amount of time, you grow in your self-awareness when you're doing all of this work. And it's so crazy because now I can see how my husband and I attracted each other when we were in high school. We both had some different family things going on, and we related on the traumatic things that had kind of occurred in our family. So we actually kind of trauma bonded in a way, right? We didn't have a lot in common in high school. My husband tried to be my friend our sophomore year of high school, and it's a funny story, but I'll save it for a different day. I was totally not interested at all. I was like, why are you talking to me? I was kind of mean. We laugh about it now, but he reminds me often that I just didn't give him the time of day. And again, long story short, actually, let me just skip this story. So anyways, our senior year of high school, I can remember we actually started texting each other, and at the time, MySpace was the social media of choice. And so he would send me messages on MySpace, and we had a field trip to go tour the University of Kentucky. And I remember he really wanted me to go, and I didn't want to go because I was more shy, and he was like the jock in high school, and he had a lot of friends and was just very charismatic. He was like vice president of our class, all of the things. And so he knew pretty much everyone and was a socialite. And I was more book smart, very meticulous, teacher's pet, like go in, get my work done, leave kind of thing. So we were complete opposites from the get-go, but when we went on our field trip together, we started talking, and he started telling me about his family, and then I started telling him about my family, and we related on some of the dysfunction within our families, and we bonded over that. Now, this could be good or bad, right? It's not necessarily the best thing whenever you get into a relationship where you're relating based on dysfunction, and then you are repeating cycles of dysfunction. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if you have maybe a parent who is an alcoholic, and then they've had a parent who is maybe an alcoholic or addicted to something else, and you relate on that level, then you kind of trauma bond with each other. But then if you don't grow and break those cycles, then those cycles can repeat within your relationship. So one of the things that I'm very, very grateful for is that both my husband and I, because we got together, really we started talking when we were 17 years old, and we started dating right at like 18 years old. The thing that we both related on outside of some of the family dysfunction was the kind of lifestyle that we wanted to live, and our goals and our ambitions and the things that we wanted long term matched up as well. And so because of that, we have both been in a growth state of mind. Growth has been something that's been important to us both. So throughout the years, maybe he's grown a little bit faster than I have mentally and emotionally, and then there's been times where I've grown faster mentally and emotionally, but at the same time, we've been kind of on a similar pace to where we don't outgrow each other and we don't kind of leave each other behind, if that makes sense. But my husband and I are complete and total opposites. In fact, a lot of people that know him first and don't know me are like, what in the world? How is that your wife? Like, she's so different than you are. And then people who know me and meet him are like, oh my gosh, he's so different than you. And so I guess the saying, opposites attract is pretty accurate for us, because we are very much opposites just based on our life experiences and where we grew up and family, different family beliefs and just all the things. And this can sometimes be challenging in relationships, right? And I think that in a lot of marriages too, if we're not working on ourselves and if we don't have the tools necessary, it can feel really easy to let our differences, whether big or small, become wedges in our relationship. And to really feel like it's hard to be happy in a relationship with someone who is so different than you are. But I think it's important to know that in most circumstances, assuming that there's no severe things going on or impacting the relationship, that everything is figure outable, and that whenever you're growing, never underestimate the impact that that can have on your relationship with your partner. So some of the things that my husband and I differ on, that we've had to have discussions about, are things like even how we want to raise our children and how we want to celebrate holidays. And I'm going to share with you also, like in navigating relationship differences, why, again, bringing everything back to emotional intelligence, why it's so important. The reason being is that in my personality, I'm like my Oma, who was my great-grandmother, or is my great-grandmother. She's passed now, but she was. I have a hard time figuring out how I want to refer to her because she's very much alive in my mind. But she is German and very full-blooded German, very stubborn, very direct, very much I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm thinking, sometimes hot-tempered. And I can sometimes be that way. Most of the time, I'm very mild-tempered, I would say. But every now and then, I feel like my German spirit of just being around her so much too comes out of me. And when my husband and I very early on in our dating experience had differences, I immediately shut down. I always felt like like if it's not going to be this way, there's no way that this is going to work. Like my flexibility in our relationship was basically none. It was kind of like, in a way, I mean, my way or the highway is what it felt like a lot of times. And it probably felt that way all the time to him. And it wasn't until that I started coaching and learning like masculine and feminine energy and how to communicate better and my emotional intelligence stuff that I was really able to navigate our differences and not make it mean that our relationship was doomed or that we were falling apart or growing apart or that we needed different partners or whatever, because your brain will do that. Oftentimes, like if there's a lot you disagree on, or if you're sometimes catching yourself, in arguments, it can feel very easy to get to a place where you're like, oh, is this even going to work? Am I with my soulmate? Is this the right person for me? And you have to kind of shush that brain drama, right? That mind drama that comes up, and know that it's okay to be different from your partner, that you don't have to agree on every single thing. With major things, of course, you want to be on the same page for the most part. But if you're not on the same page, it's very possible to still have a thriving relationship when you know how to communicate and manage your emotions. So, like some of the things that we've had discussions about where we're very opposite, or even like Christmas beliefs, okay? Now, this has killed me for years, and it takes a lot of my own work to be okay with where he's at with it and still honor where I'm at with it, even though we differ. So if you have kids that are currently listening to this episode with you in the car, turn this off and maybe listen to it at another time. I'm just going to put that warning out that if your kids are with you, that what I'm going to say next might be something that you don't want them to, hear. So just turn it off and listen to it whenever you're by yourself. Okay. So you've been warned. But so even for Christmas, my great grandparents, so my Oma and Opa, Christmas was the most magical, incredible, amazing experience. Like Christmas for me is a huge deal because of how magical my family made it. And I have a lot of amazing memories surrounding it. So, for instance, one of our traditions, we always celebrated Christmas on Christmas Eve. And my family would go down to my Oma and Opa's house. We always had filet mignon and shrimp. And, the family would bring a dish. We'd have baked potatoes. It was just, oh gosh, it was incredible, the food. But then we'd all rush down to the basement, and of course the kids are impatient, right? And we're like, hurry, adults, finish eating and drinking and get downstairs so we can open up presents. So once the kids were down there, and there would still be some adults upstairs, right, doing dishes, talking, whatever, lingering around, we would hear this little bell. So a little ching-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, and my Oma would holler down in the basement, oh my gosh, Santa Claus is outside. Do you hear his sleigh? And she would say, hurry up and come outside and let's see if you can see him. And of course, when we were really little, we're like, oh my God. So we'd hear the little bell and we'd run upstairs, and, the reindeer food that we had put down would be gone. And we'd go outside and we'd look in the sky and try to find where he was. And then we would come downstairs, and there would be tons of Christmas presents under the tree. Now, as we got a little bit older, they started to get a little bit more creative. So whoever was doing it, what they would do is they would cut off the electricity in the house. So we'd hear the little bell, all the electricity would be cut off in the house to where it was dark, and my Oma again would say, oh my gosh, Santa, let's go find him in the sky, and we'd run upstairs. And then when we came back in, the electricity would come back on, all the lights to the tree would come back on, and we'd see an abundance of just gifts that we were going to be passing out to each other. It was magical. Now, when we became old enough, and I was probably around 11 or 12, I believed for a very long time, you guys. I know it's always a debate, but I believed for a very long time because my Oma made everything so incredible. But when we got to be around 11 or 12, my cousin, who was the same age as I was, and my sister, my middle sister, who just actually had my niece, she's only 3 years younger than I am, we kind of became skeptical. So we actually refused to leave the basement as we always had. Okay. And we heard the bell. And then my Oma was like, "Oh, come upstairs just to see Santa." All the electricity went out. And instead of going along with the plan, we're like, "No, we want to see him deliver all the presents down here." And obviously they're like, "Come upstairs, come upstairs." And we're like, "No, we're not leaving. We're going to stay in the basement." Well, the only person that was down there with us was my uncle, who was sitting on the couch, and he had been watching NASCAR. And then he's like, "Who turned off the TV?" And so you can, like when your eyes adjust to the darkness, you can still like see the outline of people. And so he was sitting on the couch, and it probably wasn't even a minute or two of us standing in the dark. All of a sudden, the electricity came back on, and there were like triple the volume in gifts. And what was so incredible is that we didn't hear anybody shuffling to like throw them. There was no presents smacking, one another, but they had tripled in volume in the like 60 seconds that we were standing there in the dark, refusing to go outside. Still to this day, I'm 30 years old, you guys. Still to this day, I will not let my grandmother tell me, my grandma is the daughter of my Oma and who raised me, and I will not let them tell me how they did it. So I have had my grandma tell really close friends of mine so that one day they can tell me. Or if I have kids and my grandma is still alive, obviously, I will have her tell me so I can recreate the magic. But even at 30 years old, I just hold on to the magic that was. And I can remember, my Oma passed away in 2019. And I can remember even up until that year for Christmases, I would just be like, "I don't want you to tell me how you did it." And she would just grin. And she'd be like, "You don't want to know?" And I'm like, "No, it was so magical. I don't understand how you made that happen when we were downstairs. There was nobody down there. How in 60 seconds did you triple the volume of gifts when we didn't see anybody in the dark? And when we refused to go upstairs in just 60 seconds with the electricity coming back on? I don't understand." And when I talk about this story, even with my grandma, she just smirks and she's like, "I'll tell you if you want to know." And I'm like, "No, I don't want you to tell me. I'm going to remain a child forever and just hold on to the magic." Oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite things. So, for me, the holidays are super magical because of that. And I love Christmas Eve. I love decorating for Christmas. If you've had me on Facebook for years, you know that I go all out and I have a gingerbread peppermint theme. But my husband feels very differently about Christmas. He doesn't have the most cozy, amazing memories around Christmas. In fact, for him, it's been more of a stressful time period, a reminder of struggles and things that maybe they didn't get to do as a family. And so for years, when I would beg to put up the Christmas tree early, my husband would really throw a fit. He'd always let me do it, but he'd throw a fit. And finally, about a year or two ago, he just really had this intense reaction, and it caused an argument because I was like, "I don't understand why you're so frustrated with me putting up the Christmas stuff. I just don't understand. This is one of my favorite times of year, and it's so magical." And he had never told me his own experiences of Christmas. So every year I would just dread, in a way, the fact that, he was looking forward to it all being put away. And when he finally shared his side, it helped me understand why it was so sensitive. And so there's going to be differences that you're going to have sometimes in your relationships that feel maybe very catastrophic, but communication can solve so much of that. Because after he was able to express what he was feeling and how it makes him feel, although I don't feel the same way because I've had different experiences, I was able to kind of understand, okay, that's something that brings me so much joy, reminds him of a lot of painful things, and that he's willing to feel joy whenever it comes to, us having our own kids or being around our like nieces, and watching, them grow. But for the most part, whenever he's considering the inner child within himself, it feels like a very painful experience. So, we've had conversations around that. We've had conversations around discipline, of children and how he sees fit to discipline our future kids, and how I see fit for disciplining our future kids. And sometimes there's been differences, but the whole point of saying this is that if you're not aware of your own emotions as well, it can cause a bigger issue within that relationship. Because I know for me personally, every disagreement that we had felt very catastrophic because of the idea that I had in my mind of how a successful relationship should go. And in my brain, it was like, we need to get along about everything. We need to agree about most everything. We need to make sure that we're not, having communication errors. But interestingly enough, whenever we would try to have serious conversations and I didn't agree with something, instead of speaking up and sharing my side, for a very long time, I suppressed my feelings because I didn't want to argue and I didn't want to fight and I didn't want, I wanted to people please. And so that people pleasing streak would come out of me. So I want to bring awareness to you in how you're showing up in your relationship as well. Do you tend to be the type of person that wants to people please? Do you shy away from being assertive because you're worried that it may cause an argument and you don't feel like arguing? Are you worried that if you have a disagree, I cannot talk. Are you worried that if you have a disagreement with your partner that it's going to create tension that is very hard to navigate? And I want to encourage you to just remember that whenever you're managing your emotions and your thoughts, and you're aware of even what your emotions and your thoughts are creating and the stories you're telling yourself, there's so much that you can navigate in a very smooth manner, even whenever you don't necessarily agree with each other, and even if your personalities are so totally different. So a lot of times whenever clients come to me and they're having, like your typical relationship kind of troubles, it's usually because of the thoughts that my clients are thinking, and then the thoughts that they think maybe their partner is thinking, or things that their partner has said that they're making it mean something. And a lot of times our brain loves to be dramatic and make it this catastrophic thing that feels like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I'm with the right person, because it feels like we're not on the same page. And it does this super dramatic thing where it starts imagining that the grass is greener on the other side, and that, maybe there's somebody who would be just like you and agree with you 100% of the time. And that's just not the case. So part of navigating relationship differences is knowing that there will be differences, and it doesn't have to be a problem. It really doesn't. It doesn't have to be a problem. It can be something that you all are able to navigate together and it not even be an issue. And the more work that you do on yourself, and the more aware you are of what kind of things trigger you or upset you, or what thoughts you're having or what feelings are coming up, the better off that both of you will be within the relationship. Because if you're able to communicate your truest feelings and, do it in an emotionally intelligent way, you can get so much further in the communication piece. And, and whenever you hold that safe space for you to communicate that, you also provide safe space for them to be able to communicate back and share what their truest feelings are or where they're coming from. Okay, so it takes some work and it takes some practice, but just know that your differences with your partner are never a problem. It's not a problem, okay? And if you need help with this, of course, reach out. We can talk about it because everybody has their own specific scenarios, right? Of things maybe they're afraid to talk to their partner about. They feel like their partner might be sensitive about certain things, or maybe their partners had, some really intense reactions to things that they've talked about in the past, and now it's creating like this fear of, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't want to even spend the time arguing, or I don't want to go down a rocky path when I finally feel like things are good. But then there's like this underlying kind of piece inside of you that's not being 100% truthful or honest, right? Because you're not expressing yourself. You're not really sharing your truth. And that can create tension later. So if any of you all need any help with this, of course, there's one-on-one coaching. And you can reach out to me at any time and schedule a consult, ask questions, whatever you need. Keep sharing the podcast, you guys. I want to thank you so much for those of you who have reached out in recent weeks, messaging me your sweet messages, sharing the podcast with friends, sharing on social media, tagging me. I appreciate you so much for doing that. So many of you that listen via, Apple Podcast or iTunes or whatever it is for iPhone listeners. So many of you have been leaving reviews, and I can tell that it is helping the algorithm and more people find me because I'm getting more and more messages week after week. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to do that, because podcasters just dedicate their time. So I actually went through and redid all of my episode numbers. It was driving me crazy that I couldn't see how many podcasts I have done over the lifetime that it's been, a thing. And this will actually be episode 109. But podcasters do this on their own time, most times for free, unless we're adding ads that you have to listen to. That's the only way we can kind of get paid for the podcast. And so what helps this podcast is when you take the 30 seconds or 1 minute to reflect on how it's helped you, and you leave a review, or you share it on your social media, or you say to friends, hey, listen to this episode, it really helped me, or this podcast, and share it with your friends. So I want to just take a moment to thank the people that are doing that, because it does actually make a difference. And actually, when you're sharing it with your people, there's sometimes an episode that absolutely changes their life because they didn't have those thoughts before. They didn't have that exposure before. So it does make a difference. And I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I will talk to you soon. Have a great week.